The reason why the politicians are starting to talk about Russian television is because obviously they are doing what a lot of internet-based researchers are doing, which is to expose all these things to see if there is some hope of changing public opinion and ending all these wars. And this guy is talking about a medical condition. These people are, for what we believe, the people in charge, are psychopathic. They have psychopathic behavior. They don't feel empathy for the millions of people that they slaughter, and the public doesn't see all the atrocities. If you want to really see the pictures of dead children and beheadings and all of that, you can watch all of this on the internet, and it changes your life. Because I watched one, and that was it for me. You watch one and you understand really not only it is at stake, but that it is something that could very well happen here, So you make the connection, and you feel compelled to tell other people here, everybody's lying, so let's come together to a middle ground and try to do something about it. And I think that there has been some progress. I don't feel that progress has been fast enough for me. In light of everything that is happening in Ukraine and Syria. So I want to move forward a little bit, and because I don't want to run out of time, and I want to concentrate more on what's happening today. So I'm kind of scared, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Everything that is happening at the geopolitical level. By the way, if you want to research more where the term conspiracy theory comes from, there is a good document on the internet that you can read. It's a declassified CIA document 1035-960. I believe I covered this in the last presentation. And all of this set the stage for what I want to talk about, and that is what's really going on. And the American public really is not interested in geopolitics, and I think that should be at the center stage of everything we talk about. You hear domestic policy, people talking about vaccines, people talking about racial issues, people talking about Hollywood scandals, everything, but always foreign policy is like something that is put in the back burner, and to me it's everything. You can see what they've done in the past, what they're doing right now, and clearly they're telling us through various documents and the things that they do that we are clearly headed for trouble. So a lot of respected ex-military people and a lot of respected knowledgeable people believe that we are currently undergoing World War III. It's just that it hasn't gotten nuclear, and we hope to keep it that way. All the things that they said they were going to do, the invasion of Syria, Libya, Iran. We're going to talk a little bit on the latest developments on Iran and how they are preparing. And apparently the Iranians understand what's going on. They've been preparing for this moment, telling the people we're going to go to war at some point. We don't know when, but it's coming. So a lot of people are getting ready for that. I want to point out also briefly that the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2013 that President Obama signed, within that document, which is big, there is they state that they changed the U.S. nuclear first strike posture against China and Russia, meaning that in the times previous to that, the doctrine called for to absorb a first strike to then respond. Let's say the Russians shoot at first, then we respond. Now, that was to avoid accidents and other things. But now we have changed that to go on a first strike against Russia and China if we feel threatened. So what does that mean? And America is very close to achieve nuclear first strike dominance. That's something that a lot of people don't know about. But when you study the military strategy and what they call the full spectrum dominance, the deployment of ships and missile assets and anti-missile systems to surround both Russia and China, you realize that they are up to something. It's a clear trend. there is a lot of military assets being moved around. I mean, it's amazing. I can spend a whole presentation, and it is almost every day you see, you know, a bunch of soldiers getting moved from here to there, tanks being shipped by the hundreds to Eastern Europe, nuclear bombers being parked in England, for example, and the Chinese are doing the same also, by the way. So people perceive that something is really going on. And what do our leaders believe? Well, they believe in nuclear survivability. They believe that a nuclear war is winnable. They believe that our enemies won't press the red button, and you know, that we can keep pushing the Russians and pushing everybody, and nothing bad is ever going to happen. So that's what they're relying on, and it's all about money and power. That's how it's been for thousands of years. The United States contains 5% of the world population and currently consumes 25% of the world's energy. And we all know about the so-called petrodollar system, what it entails, and you know, if that fails, you know, our currency could go down the drain. And I'm going to show you this video real quick in a moment, but I want to mention a few things about what's been happening. The reason why we hate Iran is the same reason that we hate Libya a few years ago, is because they're trying to break away from the dollar system. Iran has been planning an oil burst where they bypass the dollar. So are the Russians, and Libya was invaded because Gaddafi was in the final stages of putting together an African currency backed by gold, and where they were going to sell oil for their oil for other currencies aside from the dollar. So you see the pattern. Saddam Hussein wanted to start selling oil in euros before he was invaded. Gaddafi, same fate. Iran is doing the same, and now the Russians are started doing the same, moving away from dollars. So it's a clear trend that it's about money and power. And you go back, and there are quotes from Dick Cheney from 1998 talking about Afghanistan and how they believed that that area was rich in oil, and you know, the best way to move that oil from the Caspian area was through Afghanistan. I mean, there's so much evidence that you can spend, you know, a lot of time looking at all of this. And same thing with Syria. What's happening in Syria is the President Assad. He's opposed to the construction of gas pipelines through his territory, some Western-backed pipelines. So that's why the West is demonizing him, so that they can, you know, get rid of him and you know, push the Russians aside, because the Russians are real good. They're real big when it comes to gas. In the gas market, the biggest natural gas company, Gazprom, is a Russian company. So all of these, to make a long story short, all of this has to do with same thing, money and power, and energy is at the center of what's going on. So they're willing to push forward with, in the case of Ukraine, for the same reason. There are lots of pipelines, natural gas pipelines that go from Russia through Ukraine to Europe. And that's a political weapon that people can use. And there are ways to bypass all of that trouble. But it's a chess game of, you know, chicken, I would call it. People are willing to sacrifice all these people to have what they want. So here is a good example of where we are headed, and I believe that you know, we are going to go to Iran. That's what General Wesley Clark was told in that interview, and it was planned years ago. And they want to get rid of you know, the regime there, and this is not going to be another Iran. I mean Iraq. It's going to be Iran. Iran is a whole different ball game. But you see, in 2009, there was a paper put together by the Brooklyn Institute, where the U.S. and Israel were attempting to establish a diplomatic road to justify a unilateral Israeli attack on Iran. So this is interesting, because if you see what happened a few days ago, where President Obama apparently was, like not getting along with Netanyahu, and he was, upset about some of the things that have been going on. But when you read the document, what they were planning and how they were planning on going about getting into Iran, it's more than clear, at least to me, that it's all political theater. They really don't hate each other. They have a plan, and what they are going to try to do is say, well, the Israelis attack Iran on their own, and now we have to join the war. And that's why they have to show like they're really opposed to each other, or not in agreement, or debating what's going on, whether they're going to have this nuclear deal. Here, let me read, because this is fascinating. This stuff is it can be depressing, but it can also be fascinating. The paper is called "Which Path to Persia? Options for a New American Strategy Towards Iran." Makes clear that negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program is merely theater, and that it will be used to give the world the impression the United States explore all possible peaceful options before resorting to violent regime change. The report states, any military operation against Iran will likely be very unpopular around the world and require the proper international context, both to ensure logistical support. The operation would require to minimize the blowback from it. The best way to minimize international opprobrium and maximize support is to strike only when there is a widespread conviction that the Iranians were given, but then rejected, a superb offer so good that only a regime determined to acquire nuclear weapons and acquire them for the wrong reason would turn it down. So remember the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You see the pattern. Now they're blaming it on the same thing. These people are not suicidal. They're not going to get a nuclear bomb and then shoot it to see themselves annihilate within 30 minutes. But they see what the problem is. They want to get fully wear armed. So that's one of the many reasons why personally I do these things and worry about, because I can see that at some point somebody will really screw it up, and we're all going to pay for it, whether we believe all these things or not, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you care about foreign policy or not. At some point, if history teaches something, is that it ends in disaster, and that's unfortunately the reality. And you can see a clear pattern from all of this. They've been telling us in papers and in their speeches that they're not going to stop at world domination. In my opinion, that's clearly what it is. They control all the energy. They control politically. They control governments. There is no opposition to them. And if you disagree, well, they invade you. But there are people that have the means to defend themselves, and we talk about the Russians. The Russians, don't have a big army. They don't have a big. Their air force sucks. Their navy sucks, but they are loaded with nuclear weapons, and that's the only means that they have to defend themselves. And if you push them, at some point they're gonna do it. I fully believe that they're fully capable of defending themselves. Let me read this. The most salient advantage this option has to offer, they're going back to the subject of Iran, has over an American air campaign is the possibility that Israel alone would be blamed for the attack. If this proved true, then the United States might not have to deal with the Iranian retaliation or the diplomatic backlash that would accompany an American military operation against Iran. So they've been trying this for years. There is a speech with James Baker, ex-Secretary of State, and Hillary Clinton, where they were joking about what they were planning to do with Iran, and that they're planning to do it in the next 2 or 3 years, and nobody will know when it's going to happen, and all of that. So all you see happening today with President Obama not going to the Netanyahu speech, all of that is political theater. It's a lie. It's meant to be deceptive, so that when the public is told the next war, and if they call mandatory military service for everybody, people will. If you oppose it, then you're not a patriot. You don't like America. You hate it. You like terror. And they've been successful so far, I have to say. They've been successful in, swinging public opinion, but it's starting to change. Again, a lot of the younger generation of people, that have the time to research all these things are starting to tell the older folks, we have a problem here, and we need to try to stop it. Do whatever we can. And they're not afraid of what they do, because they have underground bunkers. They have food for 10, 15 years, and the nuclear war, they will survive it. I'll tell you that they're prepared for that. But the rest of us, if a couple of million Americans die, that's not a big deal to them. And we have, I don't know if you guys remember Dick Cheney recently warning that if we don't do something about this ISIS group of people, that we're going to have a 9/11 that is going to be way worse than the first one. And that comes from the people who actually executed the first 9/11. So they're telling us what they plan to do, and the public, swallow it whole, and they're, oh yeah, we have to go do a ground war in the Middle East, where a couple of years ago everybody was opposed. They were able to switch public opinion or swing it to their favor. So those are the kind of things that I find depressing. But again, it's so much you can do about it. We have Putin warning about a whole lot of things, from the petrodollar to nuclear war. The Chinese recently backed Russia on their Ukraine conflict, and they're telling the NATO, you don't belong here. Just leave Ukraine alone. But they know what's at stake, and they know that the Americans won't let the petrodollar go out the door, or out the window without a fight. And that's what my conclusion is, and a lot of other people believe the same thing. And they're going to try all different things, from cyber attacks to all sorts of things before they actually confront each other with nuclear weapons. I believe that we're heading that way. Hopefully I'm wrong. If there is something I want to be wrong about, it's this, but very serious matter. But here we have some of the examples of this hardware and assets that are being moved around. I mentioned the tanks moving to Eastern Europe. I talk about the nuclear bombers being sent to a base in, I can't remember, in England somewhere. We have deployment of NATO ships in the Black Sea. We have lots of troops, getting shipped over there, and the Middle East as well. The Russians were blamed for the Malaysia MH17 shutdown incident, and German intelligence cleared them of responsibility on this. And most people don't know that. And I found interesting that two Malaysian airplanes were lost recently, the MH17 and the 370. And I find interesting that the government of Malaysia, which I didn't know, there wasn't sort of a judgment where they came to the conclusion that Tony Blair and George W. Bush were war criminals. So they labeled them, and they labeled them as war criminals. Isn't that interesting that those planes, both from Malaysia Airlines, were one disappeared and the other one was shut down, and there was a third airplane that was asked to detour and fly over another war zone in Syria from Malaysian airline that didn't make it to the national press. 3 airplanes within like 6 months. I mean, to me, it's kind of interesting.
Another thing about MH17, the Dutch, in November of 2013, when Malaysia indicted, at the same time, the Dutch pulled billions of dollars of financing out of building in the West Bank. So I think it was Berlin that made it's possible that the Israeli gangster behavior got 2 birds with 1 stone by shooting down MH17. They punished the Dutch for pulling the financing and also punished Malaysia. Yeah. It's kind of the behavior of a gangster.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've been following the MH17 and the 370, and I've talked to people that have been in the airline industry and pilots, and they find it interesting that an airplane would just fly for hours, like in the case of 9/11 with the transponder off, and nobody will notice. And with all the radars that we can track, even a firefly, thousands of miles away, that this plane is still missing. And by the way, in Operation Northwoods, they had a similar scenario. They were planning a scenario where they will just take an airplane and switch it with another airplane to, fly the other one by remote control. And I mean, it's fascinating the things that these people have done and get away with. Recently, we deployed a whole air wing of A-10 attack jets. These are meant for ground war. They're in Germany with 300 pilots. I mean, they're getting ready for something. I don't know what it is, but they're getting ready for something, as well as B-61 type mini nuclear weapons. They're being stationed. They have more of them now in Europe. So it's kind of worrying. And here is some of the things that the Russians are doing. They sent NATO this postcard. I think it was from 2 Christmas ago. In the background there is a picture of a Topol-M, I believe, nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile. And they said, we wish our friends from NATO a happy new year, because they know that this is the only deterrent they have against an invasion. So they're telling them, and they've been running nuclear drills. They've been like every 2 or 3 months they have one where they shoot a missile without nuclear weapon to test the system, make sure everything is ready. Recently, they docked a what they call a carrier killer ship in Cuba, as in a visit, and they've been threatening to deploy nukes and aircrafts to Cuba. I remember, seeing this report on CBS News where they actually showed this kind of airplane. This is a long-range bomber landing in Cuba. They've been building lots of bomb shelters in Moscow, 5,000 just in Moscow alone. So the Russians know that this fight is coming. They're getting ready for it and doing the best they can. But if they're gonna fight, they're gonna fight with nukes. They're not gonna just take the old hardware that they have and just hope for the best. And these are the people that fought Hitler. We all remember D-Day, but that's not the big war. The Russians lost 27 million people fighting Hitler, and nobody gives them credit for that. And both sides of the Atlantic funded Hitler. We all know about the Prescott Bush funding and the Rockefellers funding the Nazi war machine and Nazi companies. Banks were prohibited from dealing with doing business with the enemy back then. This happened recently. This is going back to the subject of ICBM. Russia deploys nuclear ICBMs launchers on combat patrol. All these things they're doing it for the first time in many, many years. The flying of bombers near the West Coast and the Gulf of Mexico, where, like in this case, like in a period of, there were 10 days, over 14 bombers came close to the airspace, our airspace in the West Coast. And it is intended to send a message. And the message is, we're ready, don't screw with us, And what kind of people would just play all these chicken games without speaking up? And, I'm talking about the politicians, and the military leaders also, and keep playing this game. Somebody could make a mistake, even if that's not the intention. It's during the Cold War, we were at 40 times, I believe, 40 independent times we were close to, nuclear war. We all remember what happened in the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. They deploy also in response to the America's Patriot missiles batteries in Poland. They deploy the Iskander missiles. They are on the other side of the Ukraine border, but they're aiming at the the Polish air base where the American systems are located. And the Russians told the Americans, we don't want these systems here. We have a problem with NATO coming to our back door. We feel threatened. Back in 2008, that Mendeleev was, telling the Americans, we're gonna get rid of that system that you guys are putting there. So they've been clearly warning for many years now, but we keep pushing. And at some point, I think, hopefully not, but I think that they're gonna do something. It's a matter of life or death for them. Touching real quick on the subject of nuclear primacy, the United States, for the first time in 50 years, this is an article that was shown in the very important Foreign Affairs piece, a very respected publication. And the article said, today, for the first time in almost 50 years, the United States stands on the verge of obtaining nuclear primacy. It will be probably soon be possible for the United States to destroy the long-range nuclear arsenals of Russia and China with a first strike. So what they're trying to do is put hardware in the vicinity of Russia, so that this is what I think, when they launch the nuclear first strike on Russia and China, the Russia and China won't have time to react, and all their missile silos will be annihilated. Then the so-called ballistic nuclear anti-ballistic missile defense system will come online and shoot any remaining missiles that they launch. And if we lose a few cities, to them that's not a problem. But they want to absorb, be able to destroy most of the arsenal so that they stay on top. That's what the missile defense system is all about. That's when I started freaking out, when I came to this conclusion that they've been changing the NDAA for a nuclear first strike. They're positioning their hardware for years. Now you see that the Ukraine, Libya, Syrian war that were predicted are happening, and now we're going to Iran. So, and they've been, here is something extremely important down here. They've been getting rid of all the nuclear launch officers. They've been replacing them because some of them have been drinking too much vodka, apparently, on business trips, and others have been having marital affairs, which, yeah, go ahead.
It should be also pointed out that in the advent, when that first strike happens, the U.S. attacking Russia, it would also, a warning to all of us would be when the government sends out its agents, FBI, DHS, and the rest to pick up who they suspect would be against their moves here in the United States. And so some of us could be on those lists. I know that I probably am for my political activities. I'm not afraid to do that. Just keep that in mind. When those things happen, when various dissidents and protesters and so forth are rounded up, and you hear word of it, that's probably getting very, very close to that first strike point.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that that's part of the police militarization. That's why it's so important, because they don't want to lose control here either. They're positioning the missile systems to take care of the Russians and the Chinese, but at the same time they know it's going to be a riot here, and it's going to be more than one because people will feel threatened. At that point, that's what's going to happen. They're going to start rounding up anybody who opposes the government, and we all know we are most likely we are in some sort of list, and millions. They wouldn't mind losing 20, 30 million Americans. And they will declare an emergency, and they stop payment of people that rely on government subsidies.
Part of the internal security state. That's the whole reason for it, to keep the internal pressures on against anything happening.
Exactly. So yeah, I see. I don't know. I think I can connect all these dots, and that's why I'm here. I'm worried about I care about what happened in 9/11 and all of that, and I do a lot of research, and I like the technical aspects of it and all of that. But I'm more of a big picture person, and I want to, at least do my part so that I don't have any, how you call it, regrets later of not doing anything. And I've been, telling my wife maybe we should just, take a chance and leave the country and go live somewhere else, which a lot of people are doing. It triples the amount of Americans that leave the country every day. And now the trend is with the rich. The rich are starting to live in mass and getting, places to live far from here. But for some people, this is not an option. So you come to the conclusion that at some point, if something bad happens, you're going to be here and you plan for it. But it's a scary thought. But I have no doubt in my mind that this is a Nazi-like government, and the real people running it, and that at some point, if something bad happens, a lot of people will be rounded up and taken to FEMA camps or whatever it is, and that's, I don't know, that's why I'm here. At least I said something, you know. So, but talking a little bit about Ukraine, again, we all know about all the positioning of assets in the Middle East. This is from 2 or 3 years ago when the first Syrian war was about to start, and Obama was threatening with bombing Syria. And you know, the Russians were parking their ships, you know, in the Mediterranean, sending a message, you know, don't do it. And between that and public support against another war, we were able to postpone the bombing of Syria. But we all know about ISIS, and we are sending lots of weapons to this group of people. There were recently 2 airplanes that were shot down carrying weapons for ISIS that were British airplanes. And people are like, the Iraqi government, the Iraqi Prime Minister, and there is another politician that came forward just a few days ago saying the United States is funding ISIS. So why are we funding all these terrorist organizations? Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Ronald Reagan's freedom fighters in Latin America in the 80s. There is a clear pattern of funding terrorists. And people might argue, well, they're a bunch of incompetents, but really that doesn't explain what we're doing. And we make a bigger mess. Every time we do something, we make a bigger mess. And the Americans, you know, we spent about $5 billion in this recent revolution in Ukraine. There is a video of Victoria Nuland talking to a Chevron, you know, group of people, you know, talking about why they are doing what they're doing in Ukraine. And you know, spend some time here talking about, you know, the terrorists that we fund. For example, we have, you know, a picture of John McCain here talking to a group of people in Ukraine. But right here, right next to his left, is this guy who is from the Sloboda Party over there. He's an open neo-Nazi organization. They even go like this, like the Nazis in their time. And those are the people that we're funding, and they know that that's going on. We have a picture of John McCain with the so-called Syrian moderate rebels, the hard-eating rebels that we're funding over there. And if you think that you know, it's only the Republicans who are, you know, that like oil, like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, check this out from ABC News. Biden's sons get Ukrainian oil company gig. So here is the son of Joe Biden, the vice president, getting a big post, how you call it, chair in some Ukrainian oil deal over there and accompanying Ukraine. So all of this has been planned for a while, and everybody's making money, you know, from, well, not everybody, they are making money from all these things that are happening in Ukraine. And, you know, again, it's more than obvious that, you know, we are in trouble. I'm going to move to talk a little bit about Africa. You know, I don't know if you guys remember recently we were with this Ebola scare. You know, we deployed 3,000 military personnel to fight the Ebola virus with guns. You know, and in reality, that's how it was sold to us. But in reality, what's happening is that we want to decrease our independence from Middle Eastern oil. So we know that places like Nigeria, Liberia, and all these places in Africa have oil, and the Chinese are in a race with the Americans to, you know, build diplomatic ties to try to take, you know, seize that opportunity of getting that oil. China is very vulnerable when it comes to energy, so that they're doing their part. Just a quick fact here, a few facts about, you know, all the terrorists that we seem to be, you know, funding from you know, the beginning of time. We know the Reagan's freedom fighters in Latin America. Carter funded the Mujahideen that included Osama bin Laden. Obama is funding al-Nusra and the moderates in Syria. McCain is, you know, I say McCain, but in reality this is the government. You know, the open neo-Nazis in Ukraine. And, you know, I want to point out also that, you know, we seem to get distracted with all sorts of different things here in America. And recently, you know, there was a big climate change march here in the U.S. And I believe the climate is changing. I believe that something weird is going on, but I maybe I see it from as an outsider perspective, that how can we find time to protest, climate change? It's not that it's not important. It's an extremely important issue. But with everything else that is happening geopolitically in the world, and all these wars and all these people getting killed and by the thousands and the millions, how come we find time? How come we don't prioritize what we protest? And I would go to a climate change march, anytime. But when I see that people pick and choose what they're going to protest, and when certain political parties in power, they go and protest one thing, but they don't protest the other. Like, I remember that the left was all fired up and complaining about George W. Bush's war in Iraq and all of that. And since Obama took office, you really haven't seen any meaningful anti-war protesters out there, which is one of my complaints. I don't blame the people in the public. It's mostly for the organizers. And I want to talk a little bit about how all these things of false flags and what it has to do with racial issues and all of that. And it's interesting, not only that the public doesn't know how they are being manipulated, but also that using race and demonizing your enemy is a very important political tool that has been used for years. And many domestic issues are used as a distraction from what's happening geopolitically. I remember, that the White House got involved when Trayvon Martin was the controversy came out, and the White House got involved, and the president said that could have been me and other things. But it happens that geopolitically, there was a lot of things important happening in Syria and in the Middle East, and I think the White House used this as a distraction and make it a racial issue. What I find interesting is that so much national outrage about what happened with Trayvon Martin, but here you have this guy, a 16-year-old from Colorado, American citizen, who was killed by a drone strike. And nobody knows about him. Nobody, make any big protests or anything like that. And his daddy was, quote unquote, a suspected militant. The Justice Department or the government never provided any evidence. But they didn't even say if the kid was a suspected militant. They just, targeted him with a drone strike. So there is clearly a problem here. It's like, we can't just stand up for African Americans. We need to stand up for everybody, and that's the way I see it. And I think that all these national scandals and protests and things like that are often are very, very reasonable and very important, and we need to talk about a whole lot of issues, including racial issues. But we stand on the verge of making a big mistake, and we need to look past these issues.
I think a lot of the distraction silos that are out there, these political silos, such as ones you mentioned, and 100 more, are by design, or many by design, to keep the left, keep the people distracted, and not able to come together on a single silo issue such as this.
Completely agree with you. So we have here our president that a lot of people, feel hesitant to criticize, because if you criticize Obama, you are, by definition, according to them, a right-winger and a racist. And I just got tired of that. At some point I said, forget it. But here is something interesting. He remember when he was crying when the Sandy Hook shooting happened, and he was wiping his eyes, and I never saw a single tear in high definition videos. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. There was a school that was bombed in Yemen, and who. Did anybody cry? And these are kids, just like our kids. And our president has been also quoted saying, "I'm really good at killing people," which is kind of upsetting to me, because you don't make that kind of jokes. And there are plenty more jokes that he's done like that. And you know, if you're a figure of that caliber, you shouldn't be joking like George W. Bush. Oh, the weapons of mass destruction, we haven't found them yet. You know, after 3 million people, 1.5 million in that case, died. So, anyways, that's a game. To them, that's just a game.
When did Obama say I'm really good at killing people?
Apparently, he was quoted. There is a book that was written. Can't remember the name, but I can find it for you. Where. About a year ago, yeah. And there was there is a video of him on a national dinner, press dinner, can't remember what it was, where he was telling a jokes about his daughters and this group of young, can't remember the name of the group, but it's a musical group, these young fellows. And he was telling them, like, it was something like along the lines, you can probably search it on the internet and see the original video. He was saying something along the lines like, oh, don't mess with my daughters, you know, because remember, drone strike, you won't see it coming, you know. And the reason why we do all these drone strikes and we justify them is because it is politically, and in my opinion, racist. Is if we care more about American lives, so we flatten a whole neighborhood instead of getting soldiers there at risk, and search for a suspected militant to bring it to justice. So we rather just throw a Hellfire missile, and if it's stray off course and kill, you know, birthday party, wedding parties, it's not a big deal because, you know, it's not African Americans. That would be racist.
You know, that quote, he was kind of speaking facetiously. Someone called him a murderer after one of those drone strikes. I don't think it was that kid. I think it was somebody else. And somebody called him a murderer, and he said, well, that's another title that I have now.
Was that the news correspondence did in 2014, I think, in 13 to 14, I think?
Yeah. Yeah, no, there is I voted for this guy, by the way. That's my background. I voted for him in 2008 only once. That was it for me. But, you know, it's like I don't believe him. I don't believe a single thing he say anymore. But here is a quick video of an activist and the issue of racism and how the military use it and all of that. And it's interesting because this is how they manipulate public opinion for both sides, both Republican and Democrat.